with me today is Dougal Allan. Welcome, Dougal, from Wanaka.
Thank you, Mike, and it's good to connect after obviously crossing paths at events all around the world. It's
Yeah,
nice to have this personal conversation.
late night messages from Dougal in China when he was lonely and everyone else was asleep. He was getting messages from Dougal at a multi-day race. That was quite good. You did really well there too, didn't you?
We had a good year last year, and yeah, we won all the major races. Took the recovery systems boots with me, but they often went missing, which was a bit of a nuisance when I wanted them, and my teammates had gone into another hotel room and
Yep.
gone to sleep in them.
That's why that's a common problem. We have I have issues with people calling me up saying they've got a problem and their parents-in-law have taken custody of the recovery systems and they never see it again. So that is a bit of a hazard. You need to watch that. I think a metered approach of X amount for half an hour is a good ploy.
That's a really good idea. I mean,
And
I
yeah,
put my foot down when one of the opposition teammates decided he wanted to give them a whirl. That's where I definitely put my foot down. It was only for the four of us in the same team that got to use my boots.
that's fair enough. We need to get you guys for the next event, the duo system, and so that you're treating two people at the same time. And
There we go.
that'll work well. Ease the pressure on the cues. So you mentioned that the recovery systems is amongst all the gear that you have to take. It's one of the first things you pack, or one of the things you make sure that you've got luggage allowance for. How come you've found it such a valuable piece of equipment?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Mike. We've got a quota, obviously, when it comes to gear and you're shipping it across the world. Even if you've got two chicken bags, it's amazing when you're doing an adventure race how quickly that weight builds up when you've got harnesses and carabiners and mountain bikes and helmets and life jackets and paddles. So you do need to be very careful, I guess, in your selection of what you take. But as you've just mentioned, the recovery systems boots definitely at the higher end of the list. Once I've got all my compulsory gear, of course, for the race, then they're pretty well next in line. So
that's good.
The reason really is quite simple. The racing over there is very competitive. So the teams are, generally speaking, of a similar fitness level. They can all sort of move as quickly as one another. But because it's multi-day racing, and in most cases it's at least 3 or 4 days, usually racing for 4 to 8 hours a day, the difference I find is in those teams that can recover, I guess, between each day and slow down the least.
Yeah. So not only race time, which is highly critical, particularly in, as you mentioned, where small little marginal gains can make a huge difference. But what have you discovered as a day-to-day tool with the recovery system, particularly maybe since I sent you some data recently? But what sort of what's been your discovery?
Well, I've got to be a bit careful because some of my rivals might listen to this. I don't want to give too much away, but I mean, traditionally, and as the name suggests, I've thought of the boots as a recovery tool, which they are, and I've found my training has been more consistent when I've had a routine around using the boots, particularly after hard sessions. But I got a bit of a tip off from the guy on the other end of this call at one stage around the warm-up, the value in using the system as a warm-up tool. And obviously a lot of that's to do with the mechanical action of warming the muscles, but also that oxygen delivery that comes with increased blood flow. So given it's June and I'm in a ski resort town, the idea of going out for a slow jog to get warmed up usually has the reverse effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been neat to actually having that option, I guess, to do some passive warm-up.
Absolutely. And low metabolic cost too. So you're not burning your matches that you otherwise might need for a particular part of your session as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So both ends of the day, really.
Well, I loved how you put that. You put that exactly how I would have said an Otago student would have actually said that, having come from a science background yourself and having been in Otago, and me having been born in Southland, I can completely understand the aspect of actually going up for a warm up and getting colder. Aside from that, so you mentioned a very key word that I think is the hallmark of really good athletes, and that's routine.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am training and performing at my best when I have an established routine.
Yep.
Obviously, if I'm on the move and traveling here and there, it becomes harder to keep that routine, and that's often where I find training suffers. But
Yep.
yeah, in my general routine, there's something symbolic about putting my recovery systems
Yep.
boots on, and that's for me, but that's also for my family, the kids. You know, if I just go and lie on the couch with a bottle of water, they might see that as an invite to practice their body slams. But if I've got my boots on, they know Dad's got half an hour where he's doing something pretty important, and
Yep.
and you know, they know that that's part of my, as you say, that routine that becomes fundamental, I guess, to training and race day successes.
Yeah, yeah. There's also the of course the parasympathetic healing of the nervous system, which is a really key, because it's not actually muscles that are signaling the soreness, it's actually the nervous system. And I know that you probably, like many other people, tend to fall asleep when you're on the boots as well, which is a classic sign that your parasympathetic system has kicked into healing mode. Your body's response is to put you to sleep, which is that's a great sign. And we see that in the muscle oxygen data too. As the session goes on, there's still, aside from the early boost in that first 8 to 10 minutes, where there's a really nice priming of the oxygen levels, there's still that gradual increase as the session goes on. And so many have discovered that as being that power nap, and or even a before bed strategy to in order to really make sure you maximize your sleep quality as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, physically, there's a lot of quantification that is there and available to people considering, I guess, recovery systems. But I guess what's harder to quantify, but very much the case, certainly anecdotally and in my experience, is that, as you say, it's almost the message sent to the brain when those boots go on too, that you're
Yep.
switching into that, as you say, that parasympathetic mode.
Yeah,
And that's where we know that the real recovery takes place.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Training makes you worse, recovery makes you better.
Well, I think I'm probably a lot more direct in my approaches. You know, you spend a lot of time, I guess, especially early on in the endurance sphere, being given a lot of information from different angles, and it's easy to get a bit overwhelmed by all the different ways that people tell you that you can perform and recover better. But a big advantage in being 15 years down the track is that I have really narrowed things down, I guess. There's only so many hours in the day, as you say, and having a family, you don't want to waste too much time doing things that aren't useful. And so, yeah, I think that would be my answer, is I'm very specific in what I spend my time and energy and finances and things on in and around training and performance.
Yep. Yeah, cool. And balancing between being an athlete and a coach. Personally, I found it quite tough, and I started to coach towards the end of my competitive days. And then, given scenarios where we were putting people into the open water, and I either had a choice of swimming with them or getting on the stand-up paddleboard and making sure everyone was safe, because I followed them, it became a very clear transition for me where I needed to let go of, trying to be as good an athlete as I could be. It was a transition for me, but knowing how hard it was when I was being competitive or trying to be competitive as an athlete and coach, it was a real challenge. How's it been for you?
Yeah, I'm probably in that, I guess, transitional period at the moment, and probably have been for the last year or two, and may continue to be for the next 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure. And so, yeah, I've probably got an equal level of focus that goes into the coaching as well as the racing. But I have the benefit, I guess, of probably 15 years of endurance that's built up in my system. So I can probably afford to be a little bit more smart around my training time. And I just love sharing information and learning. And I find as a coach, and you'll agree, I'm sure, you learn so much from your athletes.
Absolutely.
To tell.
Yeah.
I've got athletes that teach me things about nutrition. They will be talking about something and they'll say, "Oh, do you find that gives you a bit of a bloated tummy?" And I think about it for a moment and go, "Yeah, I suppose it probably does." And next thing, they're offering me some other options. So it could be nutrition.
Yeah.
Others that have children that have grown up and left home, they can kind of throw advice at me. My kids are 5 and 3, so they come up with some sort of suggestions in and around what they found worked in terms of managing family and children of that age. So it's everything really. But I guess it's also when you're teaching as a coach, you're also learning, aren't you? Or at least reinforcing information in your own mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's quite a cool little balance, I reckon.
Absolutely. No, it's a wonderful thing, and it shows what a humble spirit you have as well. Because I believe coaches should be going on learning forever. They should be talking to other coaches, and we talked about this a week or so ago. How New Zealanders have a little bit of an unfair advantage. Some of it is in your background there, behind you, the background picture. Look at that for a place to train. How could you get bored of that?
Yeah.
Except for when there's a southerly about to rip over those hills, that would be probably something less funny. I think the other thing is we have a legacy of the Lydiard legacy of what the template, the formula that Arthur laid down, and I see that coming up really strongly in endurance athletes in New Zealand, particularly, where they don't seem to junk train, whereas in other parts of the world, the Lydiard pyramid of 87-9-4, 87% strength endurance, 9% threshold, 4% at VO2 max, and the periodization between strength endurance, hills, speed, and recovery. Some parts of the world, particularly where I am, people that are uncoached, and even some that are coached, seem to turn that pyramid upside down. And it's not surprising that they don't improve. How would you see the standard in New Zealand? And let's talk about the last 2 coast-to-coast races, where to win in New Zealand, you've got some serious competition.
Yeah, we do, and any sort of outdoor, probably adventure-based endurance sport. So ultra running being a good example, adventure racing, coast to coast being what we consider multisport. New Zealand is one of the benchmark countries in the world in terms of performance. So to do well in a adventure-based event in New Zealand is no mean feat, and it's probably equal parts exciting and daunting when I line up to do one of these races, for sure.
Absolutely. So we also talked about the aspects of adventure racing, which are quite different from a skill set from triathlon. I mean, you may be riding a bike, but you may be riding on some terrain that requires some off-road, really high-level off-road handling skills. So talk to us about where you live and the benefits of that, and how much do you have to manage the weather?
Yeah, I mean, the pluses they become pretty obvious to anyone who arrives in, the town I live in is Wanaka, and for the internationals, it's near Queenstown, which is a fairly well-known place, or ski resort town about an hour from here, and you arrive in a place like this and you're instantly inspired. Well, at least you are if you're interested in running, biking, swimming, kayaking, those sorts of outdoor activities, because you are surrounded by giant mountains and there's beautiful crystal clear lakes and rivers. I mean, when I go kayaking, for example, I just pop a little plastic cup in my life jacket and just drink as I go, which is there wouldn't be too many people around the world that could lay claim to being able to drink from their own lake. So, the terrain is just readily available, always, endlessly varied. There's always different options out there. I'll live here my whole lifetime, hopefully, and I'll never, scrape the surface of what's out there. But as you say, for that same reason, you're very exposed to the elements. We get the extremes. We get the hot summers and the cold winters. And so, as exciting as it is to always have those endless opportunities as far as terrain and places to go out and train go, you're often, in situations where you're having to manage yourself quite carefully, choose the right clothing and equipment, and it doesn't always feel like paradise anyway.
Well, we were out at the Pioneer at Bannockburn for the 2 stages that ended at Bannockburn last year, and the weather was pretty ordinary. So
when it decides to rear its ugly head, it can be a pretty frightening place to race a bike, that's for sure.
Thank goodness there was a lot of hot food around, and a lot of very grateful people. Very well organised race, and there's a lot more to choose from with multi-sport and adventure racing now in New Zealand, particularly in the South Island. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there just continues to be, like even post the COVID lockdown, because being in New Zealand, we're really lucky right now. We're on the other side of the lockdown, although we could obviously revert back. But there's new events being announced all the time. There's a new ultra run about 20 kilometres from my front doorstep that's just been announced. So, if you never left the South Island, you've got a lifetime of adventure-based activities and events available to you to last a lifetime, which is pretty special.
And why would you want to leave the South Island, except for if it's to go to someplace overseas and show them some hard racing, perhaps?
Yeah, that's right. Or, if you're more interested in an easy race, you might leave the South Island to find something flat and more predictable.
Fair comment. It's a fair comment. Well, Dougal, it's been great catching up with you, and we appreciate being part of your journey as well, and we appreciate your comments about what you found in having a ritual of using us being your recovery ritual, and how important that's been, and warm up as well. And we also spoke a week ago how you can put an ice pack in there, a gel pack, if you have the misfortune of having an injury, and back the pressure off, and then have ice compression therapy as well. So there's that utilization as well for the cuff, so not just recovery. So we really appreciate having you on board, and also I personally appreciate what you're doing as an athlete and a coach as well. Having been that, I doff my hat to you, because not an easy thing, but what a great lifestyle. And I think you'll hopefully have no end of races on your back doorstep going forward as well.
Yeah, totally. And it's a busy life, but I choose it and I really enjoy it. And I think, again, just finally, it's probably speaks volumes for recovery systems if I'm asking so much of myself on a daily basis, and I seem to stay healthy and stay fresh enough to perform well. And, that probably says it all, really.